Got it? Got it. There we go.
All right, let me check on social media to make sure we are live. And yes, we are live. All right, guys. Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Kitchen. Today, I'm very excited about this one. We are doing another combo episode based on the fantastic cookbook, Supper with the Stars, with your host, Vincent Price. So joining us, and this is a triple coast here episode, joining us from London is Peter Fuller of the Vincent Price Legacy in the UK and co-author of this fantastic book, along with Jenny Hamilton of silverscreensuppers.com. And joining me once again is my friend Lora Stocker of the Ava Gardner Museum in Smithfield, North Carolina. So we've got me in LA, Lora in North Carolina, and Peter in London. So welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Today we're going to make Ava Gardner's Fillets of Flounder and Vincent Price's, and please forgive me, all my French friends, for butchering your beautiful English, Pomme De Terre Macaire. That is remotely right. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And tell us about yourselves briefly for people just joining us. And Lora, you go first, and then Peter, just a little bit about yourself and about your love of the star you are talking about today.
Well, hello, everyone. As Cherie mentioned, I've been fortunate enough to be on her show a few other times where we've done other fun deep dives into the life and career and legacy of Ava Gardner. I am based in North Carolina, born and raised in North Carolina, as you can tell by my accent. And I am a graphic designer, artist, and illustrator. Work with a lot of clients. You may occasionally see my work online. I work a lot in freelance capacity with the social media team at Turner Classic Movies. So I'm sharing fun stuff that we're doing from time to time, and then work with other clients in North Carolina and throughout the country and a few overseas. Other than that, I am very proud to be a board member with the Ava Gardner Museum in Ava Gardner's hometown of Smithfield, North Carolina. I'm a huge Ava Gardner fan, have always been passionate and excited to learn more about the classic film stars and great musicians that come from my home state of North Carolina. And Ava grew up just down the road from me. So I joined the board. I started out working in a volunteer capacity, working with their kind of helping ramp up their social media presence. And then I was asked to join the board in the fall of 2019. So I've been on the board a few years now, and we have a lot of fun stuff coming up for Ava's Centennial, which we're going to kick off basically a year's worth of special events and programming and things that are going to start with our festival in the fall in October of this year. We're going to have some special things on her actual centennial birthday, and then continue that programming throughout the following year. So follow the Ava Gardner Museum on social media and join in the conversation.
Thank you so much, Lora. And Peter, tell us, I know both of you guys have been on Hollywood Kitchen before, but tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with the Vincent Price Legacy.
Oh, hello, everyone. Yeah, thank you for having me back again. It's been great. So I'm Peter Fuller. I was born and raised in Australia, but I've lived in London since 1991. And I've actually been doing, I've worked in publishing for 27 years. And then just before COVID happened, I got made redundant. And so it gave me the impetus to actually finally put together a cookbook, which is an idea that I actually hatched with Jenny Hamilton of Silver Screen Suppers, to actually do a cookbook about Vincent and his co-stars, because, you know, over his 50 years in the business, he had so many fantastic co-stars, and we were surprised that so many of them actually had recipes in different magazines, like women's magazines or different periodicals and stuff, and even had cookbooks. And, you know, so we thought, let's put it all together. And that was the genesis of Supper with the Stars, which we put together as just a limited edition, 250 copies. And we've practically sold out. In fact, we've only got 10 copies left. But I do have some good news for you later on in the program. But as for me, is that I'm now working on some other projects with the Vincent Price Legacy since 2011, I've been in partnership with Victoria Price and the Vincent Price estate to work on, like different stuff to promote Vincent's legacy in various ways, in presentations, online, and doing our special bespoke tour groups, which we did up until obviously the pandemic hit. And we hope to resume that next year with a trip to Italy, which was to Rome in particular, which was Vincent's favorite city apart from London.
Let's go, Laura.
I'm all aboard. Just name the dates.
Seriously. Oh, man.
You could cook some dishes. I could talk a little bit about Ava. I mean, there's a lot of synergy there. Ava loved Rome. Ava loved Italy. She loved Europe, to love to travel. So
I like to eat pasta and gelato, so I'll contribute to. Excellent. Well, I thought we would start off with the fillets of flounder for a couple reasons. First off, it doesn't take too long to make, but the potato dish of Vincent Price, you have to make it for like, I think, an hour or something? You saute it. So I figure I could make the fish, start the potato, saute the potato, and while that's going on, we can do our deep dive into both stars and their 1949 film, The Bribe. Sound good? Okay, so for Ava Gardner's Fillets of Flounder, you mix egg, milk, salt, and pepper, and you soak the flounder in this mixture for 15 minutes. So about 15 minutes before we went on the air, I can't really show this to the camera without spilling it all over myself. But anyway, just believe me, there is milk, egg, salt, and pepper, and a piece of flounder in here. Okay, so I've soaked it for about 15 minutes. I'm gonna get my hot plate revved up here. And now I'm gonna take the flounder out and put it in the breadcrumbs. Hopefully this will go well. Let's see here. Okay, put the flounder in the breadcrumbs. I'm gonna try to evenly distribute the breadcrumbs across the flounder too, as much as I can. Let's see here. Okay, this is what it looks like thus far.
And it's recommended, I'll just chime in if you don't mind with a couple things.
Sure.
If you can't get flounder, any kind of mild white fish will work. I know that might have been some of the feedback with folks making this dish in London, your test group. But flounder is a very common fish in the States. It's particularly popular in the South. In North Carolina, it's very common. In fact, when I made it, I got it from a local fishmonger, and it was caught that morning or the day before right off my coast of North Carolina. So typically when you get it, if you have the fishmonger go ahead and fillet it for you, it will still have the skin on. The skin is edible, and really you don't notice it once you've cooked it. You don't notice the taste of skin. You will cook it with the skin side down first, and then let that cook and brown before you flip it.
Okay, I hope people don't get upset. I went to the grocery store and I was kind of in sticker shock at how expensive the fish were. A tiny piece of fish, at least here at my local grocery in LA, started at $10 and went all the way up to $23. So my decision was very much dictated by economics. And, I wound up purchasing the $10 version, but it was also frozen. So I've de-thawed it this morning. And what I was going to do, every time I grab this pan, it like shoots crumbs and breadcrumbs into my face. I don't know why that is. Okay. So, all right. So I've got it in the breadcrumbs here.
Looks great.
It de-thawed for quite a while. I soaked it in cold water for like a while this morning to de-thaw it. All right. It is encrusted in breadcrumbs. And now I'm going to put it in the pan here. The hot plate is a little trickier to cook with than a normal oven though, because it kind of takes its sweet time kind of getting hot. So while this is happening, I think we can go ahead and talk and do our deep dive kind of while this is working, because otherwise the show will be like way longer. So
can I just say something as well, talking about economics, is that I too found going out to find, because obviously we can't find flounder well here in London. So I was looking at different alternatives. It was quite expensive, but I did find a fantastic sustainable fish, which is called bassa. I don't know whether you know about it. And it worked really well. A nice firm white fleshy texture. It works really well with this particular dish. And also, is just one other thing is that in the recipe, it actually advises that you sift the breadcrumbs, because what it does is that actually the breadcrumbs are actually become very, very soft, and it gives a really nice even texture when you're actually cooking the fish.
That's a great tip, and I will definitely do that next time.
Well, and to that point, again, you know, any fish that you're either comfortable cooking or is economically the right one. Luckily, you know, in North Carolina, I'm near the coast, and so lots of seafood is very abundant and generally reasonably priced. If you get stuff that's, you know, very common to our coast, flounder being one of them. So that's why it's such a popular fish here. But again, any kind of mild white fish works really well with this, and makes a delicious supper.
One thing, while this is frying here, one thing, Laura, that I am very eager to talk about is the Ava Gardner Museum's events, because I really want to come up for some of them. My family lives 5 hours south of North Carolina, so they all live in Georgia, and my mom is on board with the road trip idea. I've just got to tell my dad on it, but I really want to come up there for some of the events. So will you let us know the second that schedule is available so we can?
Yes. We have a couple things that kind of the main thing we've already announced is our festival in the fall. It's going to be in October. The dates escape me. I'll find it in just a second and tell you. But that's going to be kind of this kickoff event where we begin the year-long celebration of celebrating Ava's centennial year. But we have some things in the work. Unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's kind of limited what we can announce yet, because we don't have things totally finalized. But we will be announcing that on our social media as well as on the website. So if you'll just follow, you know, avagardner.org is a great place to start. And then we're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and all of that. And we'll be making announcements in the weeks ahead. But we've got a lot of fun things in the works that, if all works out, I think we're going to have some very happy Ava fans out there. But in general, the theme of the festival is to celebrate the breadth of Ava's life, the entire 100 years, from her North Carolina humble beginnings all the way up to kind of her, you know, happy settled life in London in the last few years of her life, and the totality of her career and all of that. So it's got a lot of things we're going to highlight and celebrate, and try to let people know the real Ava, things beyond kind of what the press or tabloids tended to cover, and let you learn more about the real person. So we're really excited about it, and we hope you all can join us either online or in person.
I almost always go home to Georgia at Christmas. So, and that's her birthday is like Christmas Eve. So I'm really hoping I can sell my family on the Ava Gardner Christmas experience here.
Well, and I will give you, we have a kind of what we call a heritage tour, because there are so many sites in the area that are still in existence that were from her time. The home where she was born is still standing. One of the residences that she lived as a young girl. Of course, we have the museum, and we have her grave site. She's buried just, you know, within a mile of the museum. And then there's a local theater that she went to as a kid, or when she'd come home to visit North Carolina. There's other little landmarks around the area. So we do this really neat heritage tour. So when you come, Carrie, I'll give you a personalized one. I'll take you around and show you happily so. All of the Ava sites.
I'm trying to, my smoke alarm is very sensitive. If it should go off on this episode, you guys carry on, and I'm just going to be running around with Maniac. But all right, here's what the fish is looking like.
Oh, it looks great.
Looking good.
Yeah, you see it, but it's looking good, and the smoke alarm hasn't yet gone off, which is kind of awesome. So I'm going to set the fish aside here, because I think it's pretty good at this point. I had a buttered skillet, so it's been fried on both sides until browned. So
done.
We're gonna set that aside. And then we're gonna start the potato part.
And I'll just say real quick, the dates of the Ava Gardner Festival, which will kick off everything, and we'll have some screenings at that. We have some special guests in the works. Some new exhibits that we'll be unveiling, some new artifacts that we've acquired, and hopefully some more that we'll get in between then and now that we'll be debuting. It's going to be October 7th through the 9th. That's a weekend. So like a Friday to a Sunday.
Okay.
So mark your calendars, save the date, everybody.
All right. And will there be a virtual component for Ava Gardner fans who cannot make it to North Carolina?
Hopefully so. We're trying to make that happen. We launched a program in the beginning of the pandemic, kind of that time frame, called Ava Chats. That is an extension. It's kind of a long format conversation. And Carrie, you're going to be a guest sometime. And Peter, you should come. We want to do a lot more episodes. But that was kind of a virtual pilot program that we started doing, kind of long format conversations about deep dive conversations about a specific film or a special guest. We've had some of Ava Gardner's family on that show, where we have longer conversations about what Ava was like, you know, to her family, and again, away from the spotlight of Hollywood. So we've done some really neat episodes of that. We did a whole deep dive into Ava Gardner's 3 marriages. So those are available through the website, and we're hoping to do some additional components under that moniker of Ava Chats as part of the festival. So.
Excellent. Okay, now we're going to start the potato. So I got up earlier this morning and I baked a baked potato. I baked it at, let's see, 350 degrees for about an hour. Before I baked it, I kind of coated it a little bit with butter and salt, kosher salt and pepper. Now I took it out of the oven before we went on the air, and I've cut the potato in half. So it says mash 1 tablespoon of butter to, okay, break the potato in half and scoop out the pulp with a fork. Excuse me. So I'm going to start that process right now. I'm going to scoop out the potato pulp with a fork here, which it should be pretty tender after baking for as long as it did this morning.
It seems like the longer you bake a potato, the better. Just
Yeah,
you really want that soft, fluffy inside to it when you make this, I think.
And a great tip is, like, if you've got a metal skewer, put the metal skewer into the potato when you're baking it, because what it does is it actually brings that heat right into the center of the potato and actually cooks it beautifully.
Every time I hear someone say potato, I just think of The Old Dark House, and it makes me laugh.
Oh, yes, Ernest Thesiger, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I cannot not think of that. All right, so we've got our potato pulp that I have just now scooped out here. Okay, so mash 1 tablespoon of butter into the pulp and add salt and pepper to taste. Mash mixture until smooth. Okay, so I've sectioned off here a tablespoon of butter. It doesn't say how much salt and pepper, so I'm just gonna kind of, I don't know, sort of eyeball it. I kind of like using a pink Himalayan salt. It kind of has this nice crunch to it that I personally like. And all right, now I'm gonna mash it up here. And then it says in heavy frying pan, melt 1 tablespoon of butter, put the potato pulp into frying pan and spread it into a flat cake. It is best when it is at least 1 inch thick. Saute very, very slowly until golden brown on both sides. So it seems like it needs a very long time to saute here. Peter, tell me about how that's worked when you have made it.
Yeah, I've done it twice now, and both times it says slowly, but it doesn't actually give you an idea of how long, like how many minutes, like. And I did it for about half an hour, and I just thought, well, it looks nice and golden, but also it's got a lot of butter in it, and then it asks to put butter in the skillet as well. And I spoke to Victoria about this. I said, oh, you know, I tried your dad's recipe, and it's got a lot of butter. And he goes, well, that's because Mum loved butter. So her mum Mary, I think she loved this particular dish because it's so buttery, and it's very buttery. So, but Laura, you came up with a great suggestion about the cooking time on this.
Yeah, I actually made it. I cooked 4 baked potatoes. I made a big. I was telling them before the show started, I got a little overly ambitious with all of my dishes. I made the tomato sauce from scratch for the fish and got way too much fish, and I have a big, huge plate of fish in my fridge. But with this, I did several baked potatoes and kind of mashed them all together with, you know, the same proportions roughly. But I took a saute pan, probably about the same size of the one Carrie is using. And I just put everything in it and kind of made it sort of like a souffle, maybe like a big, the directions talked about cutting it like a quiche. So I sort of made it that way where it just filled the pan. And with that many potatoes, it ended up being about an inch thick. And I just let it cook a long time, and then, but ran into issues when I needed to flip it. So I was telling them before the show started, I actually went ahead and kind of scored mine as wedges and flipped the wedges, and then cooked it and had a slice of it, my husband and I, for dinner. Each of us had a slice, and I just left it on the stovetop to keep kind of cooking on a low temperature for dinner while we ate dinner. And probably about 30 or 40 minutes later, I came back and they were these beautiful little wedges, perfectly brown on each side with a little bit of crunch. So they held together nicely. So, so just kind of letting it, it's kind of one of those things to cook it first and get it in the pan and let it go, just kind of on a low or medium low heat. At least for me, this worked. And then do everything else you need to cook, and just let it go.
I've got my potato pulp.
Oh, and did you do that with like all the 8 potatoes?
I did it all one. I mean, I had a large skillet pan like Carrie's, maybe even a little bigger, and just did it like that. But it really turned out quite lovely. And if I had, not eaten 2 slices, one for myself and one for my husband, it would have been a beautiful presentation. And then I garnished it with just some fresh cut green onions, just to give it a little color. And it was very good.
So I've got my pulp, and I'm going to kind of dump it upside down into the pan. I have a question, Laura. When you guys do the Ava Gardner Christmas event, which I am so hoping to attend, are you guys going to make a ton of Ava Gardner's recipes? Because if you are, I would totally come and help. That would be the coolest thing ever.
That's a great idea. We haven't gotten quite to that point yet of thinking, but we have had that conversation before to have kind of a Gardner family dinner as a component or a fundraiser component for the museum. That's been talked about in the past, and I think that would be fantastic. And to have perhaps a cookbook author come join us from London, if he's willing, and have a cooking show host come from LA. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities there.
Well, what's funny is I realized this coming August will be 2 years I've been doing these Hollywood Kitchen episodes. Mm-hmm. And I kind of was looking back on all the stars I've covered so far. And it seems like Ava and Vincent are 2 of the ones I have done the most on, except for maybe Norma Shearer. And it strikes me, I was kind of thinking, like, why have I gone to them so much? I'm like, well, they were both fascinating people, not only on screen, but in their personal lives as well. And then secondly, both of them, I think, were the real deal. They actually cooked this food. This wasn't some publicity stunt. Like, they really did this. And also, neither one of them has ever let me down. Like, every time I've made one of their recipes, I've been really happy with the results. And I can't say that for quite a number of them, but I can say that about Vincent and Ava. In fact, last Thanksgiving, Laura, when we did the Ava Gardner's pecan pie, I had so many people write me and go, I made that for Thanksgiving. That was incredible. Like, I think that's been one of the biggest runaway hits of any recipe.
That makes me so happy. And it's just fun because, Vincent and Mary were the same. I mean, they love to cook. They love to eat. My understanding is that, at least, and that was kind of a part of their identity. Ava's family was the same. Her family spent time together in the kitchen. They love to cook. Having a family meal together was part of their kind of family dynamic. The women kind of going off and chatting over coffee in the kitchen, making cakes and doing other things. And food was always a big component of their family time. And Ava loved food and loved to cook. And, when she went to Hollywood, she never did the whole like crash diet kind of thing when she first went there. I mean, she was always in really good shape. And was very athletic and all that, but she really ate and loved food. And you can see that in the recipes, especially the ones that are truly connected back to the family, those kind of official Gardner family recipes, and getting to talk to members of the family. Her niece, who is the co-trustee of the Ava Gardner Trust, which is a does charitable work and licensing of Ava's brand. Getting to hear the stories of like, well, every year, every family gathering, we had a pecan pie, we had ambrosia, they always kind of had these core dishes that always were part of the family that just connected them back to each other. And it's just, I think that shows through in the recipes we've made, Carrie, together, that they're kind of really good, savory, down home recipes And that's neat. I'm glad to hear people have enjoyed cooking along with us.
And the blueberry buckle we made as well, that was so good. And what really amazed me about it is I love fresh fruit in the summer, of course, and you can put almost any fruit in that and it works. You and I did the blueberry version, but I got invited to a 4th of July party and I thought, well, I'm gonna throw strawberries in and make a strawberry blueberry 4th of July. That was delicious.
Yeah, you can put any fruit in that kind of cobbler dish or the buckle dish and it'd turn out great.
Yeah, and then also I found myself eating it for breakfast like every day for a while. So, because it's actually a breakfast pastry. It can totally that in addition to being a dessert, technically.
Absolutely. It's very flexible like that.
So neither of these stars have let us down in any sense of the word, and they are not going to. So there's a reason we drink out of the Ava and Vincent wells quite often.
And I was just going to say is that this particular dish that we've included in Supper with the Stars from Ava is from Cooking with Ava, which is actually available at the Ava Gardner Museum, which is published in 1996, I believe. We are
hopefully going to have a new, I think I can say that. We're working on a new edition. With some additional recipes provided by the family. And this recipe, and I'll show it later, I'm going to have a little presentation for those of you who don't know or didn't see it posted on social of some artifacts from the museum that we can talk about in conjunction with the film. And I'll show a picture of the cover of the book. The museum has a large, basically not her entire library, but a large portion of Ava's own book library. Books that were given to her by people, signed, autographed by James Baldwin with special inscriptions and all sorts of wonderful authors and things of the 20th century. And in addition, we have a few of her cookbooks. And she purchased a book in the late 1960s, a soul food cookbook from Bloomingdale's for $3.95. It still has the price tag on it. And this particular recipe came from that. She hosted, and I've talked about this in the last time I was on Hollywood Kitchen with Cherie. She hosted a big fundraising event for the Free Southern Theater group, which was a group trying to bring theatrical productions to underserved communities of color in the rural South. And she did this big fundraising event, and they did a soul food supper at the Waldorf Astoria. And it was just a who's who of stars and performers at this event. It's really a fascinating event that happened. And this particular recipe, this fillet of flounder recipe, was in that soul food cookbook. And it was one that she likely would have, used, cooked. And especially because flounder, again, being such a popular, common ingredient in North Carolina in particular. So, but yes, it was included in that edition of the, and it'll be in the next edition too, when we get that.
I found my Cooking with Ava cookbook on eBay, actually. So if you look on eBay, in the meantime, some of the stuff do turn up. Excellent. So this is going to take a while, I can tell, to kind of simmer here. Do I put a lid over it or not? What is the best? No. Okay. Very good. So shall we talk about The Bribe? Because this was kind of the film that is some crossover here. They both co-starred in the 1949 film noir, The Bribe. So let's talk about that movie. Share your thoughts, Lora.
Well, I can get into a little more when we do the presentation kind of thing that I brought, but this was Ava's fourth film noir. She got to Hollywood in 1941 when she was a teenager. She was, for those of you who don't know, she was discovered basically by a photograph. Her brother-in-law took this stunning photograph of her when she was on break between high school and college, went up to New York to visit her sister, and her brother-in-law was a photographer. He took this picture of her, put it in the window. It created some buzz, and they basically decided to end up sending it into MGM to see if they would be interested in signing her. And that's how she was discovered. And so she came back from North Carolina, back up to New York, did a film test, and got signed. But spent the first, 5-6 years of her career kind of just in the background of films in MGM. They really didn't know what to do with her. And it took them, which is insane, but it took them loaning her out for 2 film noirs in 1946, Whistle Stop, and then The Killers. And The Killers in particular is the one that really launched her career.
That's a favorite of mine.
And it's wonderful. And then she did another film called Singapore, and before she did The Bribe. And The Bribe is basically truly her last film noir, which I wish she had done more of them because she's so great in them. But this film was, 46 was The Killers. This was 49. And I'll show in a minute when we look at the some of the stuff I've put together from the museum's collection, how the press kind of covered her. Even though she had been in Hollywood 8 years, they're still kind of treating her like she's a newcomer, like she's just been discovered. And that's kind of interesting that although she had been basically a seasoned actress by this point for 8 years. But this was an interesting film because MGM, wasn't known for film noir like some of the other studios were. So this film it has all the kind of lots of the traditional elements of film noir. It's got, flashbacks, voiceover, a woman who may or may not be double crossing the lead, an illicit love affair, all those kinds of, and crime. It's got a lot of the film noir elements that we all know and love. But it had mixed reviews when it came out. And it's a film that seems to keep getting rediscovered, and wasn't necessarily a big hit when it first came out. Like I said, in fact, it lost money with the studio. I think it lost a little over $300,000 for the studio. But since that time, it's really been it's gotten some momentum behind it. And as more and more people discover it, they're excited to see, these 5 big talents in this movie. You have Robert Taylor, Ava Gardner, John Hodiak, Charles Lawton, and of course, the ever so fabulous Vincent Price. And Vincent Price and Charles Lawton really, and Ava, in my opinion, those 3 steal the show. It's worth watching for those 3 performances. Not to knock Robert Taylor or John Hodiak, but it's just a fun film, and it's got a really great climactic ending, which I won't give away, but it's a lot of fun. So that's just a little bit, but I'll turn it to Peter and let him share some more thoughts about the film.
No, I totally agree, Laura. You're absolutely right. I think that Vincent and Charles Lawton really saved the film. Because I hate to say it, but I think Robert Taylor is a little bit wooden, in it. And I think that's what the reviews also remarked about. But it's got fantastic cinematography. I mean, you've got some real lovely sort of like that monochrome sort of cinematography of like the wet rain and the it's very, very good. But Vincent is very nasty. I mean, there's the scene with the boat, when they go fishing and he tries to kill off Robert Taylor, but ends up killing off somebody else who gets eaten by a shark. I was like, oh dear, that's a bit rough. But of course, the other thing is that this film has actually become a bit of a cult classic, not because that it's the film, but because of what became of it. Because of his use, it was repurposed in Steve Martin's Dead Where Dope Men Played. In 1980, was
82, I believe.
82, yes, yeah. And that, I remember seeing that at the cinema and going, oh my God, I'm seeing Vincent Price. Where's the film from? And it took me ages to track it down that it was The Bribe, because when Steve Martin's film came out, they didn't actually say that it was from The Bribe.
And there's some scenes from The Killers in that too, so it works well. Ava kind of had a similar look to her hair, how her hair is styled, how she is kind of presented, especially, with these 2 really iconic black dresses that are just to die for. So, they were able to use both of those, and it really kind of reinforced her impact in that femme fatale kind of character, even though she only made 4 of those types of films.
Yeah, so that's what I would say about the Bribe. It's worth checking out if you haven't seen it.
And Eddie Muller has shown it on Noir Alley also.
Yes.
It just amazes me that anybody could look at Ava and not know what to do with her. I just want to be like, are you blind? How could someone not know what to do with that? And same thing, Judy Garland had to go to Fox to make Pigskin Parade before MGM knew what to do with her. It's like, that's kind of the common story with a lot of the female stars in particular that we really love, that they their home studios just never really knew what they were capable of in some respects. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Ava was definitely one of those where it was like she just didn't get the opportunities, and then when she did, and they saw how magnetic she was and what a screen presence she has, and Cherie and I've talked about this in the past, in a lot of Ava's films,
she may be the female lead, but she's not necessarily on the screen that long. Or she may not be the lead, but they bill her like she is the lead. Like in Showboat, if you look at all the posters of Showboat, Ava's like the largest character, you know, and then it'll be Howard killing Catherine Grayson and all that. And you would think that she's in the entire movie, but she's only in 30 minutes of it. Yet her character resonates. That's another thing about Ava as a performer. It didn't take much for her to have a huge impact on a movie. She could come in and just be in it for a short period of time, especially later in her career when she transitioned to more character roles and did the disaster films of the 1970s and some of the horror kind of thriller films that she did. She may not be in the film very long, but her character is always there, always lurking, always mentioned, always referenced in the background. And that's kind of a neat thing about part of her body of work, that she could have such an impact on screen. And it took 5 years before MGM had any idea of what they had, which is, like you said, Cherie, it baffles me too. I can't believe it.
Boggles the mind. Is what it does. It's crazy. And Vincent, talking about him, he's wonderful with Gene Tierney and Leave Her to Heaven and Laura. I mean, so many people associate Vincent with the horror genre, and rightly so. But he is really terrific in a number of film noirs.
Yeah, he's this. I think that's one of his the things that he can do best is that he could just turn any character into like something that you want to watch, no matter how small or big the part is. And his film noirs are always worth checking out, especially like The Long Night. Now, that was the Henry Fonda film, which again was a flop, a bit like The Bribe, but has become a cult classic over the time because you watch it and you go, oh my God, he's so good in it. And what was the other one that he's did? Rogue's Regiment, which is, that's quite a good little film noir.
His Kind of Woman?
Rogue's Regiment.
And His Kind of Woman.
Oh, His Kind of Woman. Oh my God, that's the Technicolor noir, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Well, that's the one Howard Hughes messed with so many times that it kind of became a Vincent Price film, even though it was supposed to be, I believe, a Robert Mitchum, Jane Russell film. And it just flew off the rails so badly, but in a really glorious way. Yeah, because they actually developed Vincent's character of Mark Cardigan, who was the ham actor, and he ends up becoming the hero. He wants to, he thinks he's like, the hero on the silver screen, but he ends up becoming the hero of the day by helping to save Robert Mitchum. It's a great film, and I love it just to watch how Vincent's character works in that. So. Absolutely, I would kind of describe that particular performance as like full blast. Just dial it up to 11 kind of performance, Yeah,
and we've included that one in the cookbook as well. But also, there's a great scene in His Kind of Woman where his character has actually like gone out and shot a duck, and he's actually preparing it's duck a la cardigan, we called it. And so you watch him, and he actually is like preparing the duck. And we wanted to thought, oh God, what would be great was to actually just recreate that particular duck in reality, sort of thing, because it's not a recipe. But it's a great little scene. Just shows a bit of Vincent's love of food.
Definitely.
Well, it's great, watching any Vincent Price is an actor. And I feel the same about Ava, is that you're never, even if the movie itself isn't necessarily the best movie or your cup of tea, their performances are so interesting, and what they were able to sometimes do with very little and really kind of put their stamp on it and make it memorable, that it's worth, seeking out all of their full filmography if you can.
Another thing I think that is true about both of them also is I think they're underrated as actors and actresses. I think so many of the stars of Hollywood's golden age, they made it look so easy that I think people took for granted how good they were,
Yeah, Vincent always sort of said when he, about 1973, when he was about to do Theatre of Blood, and, he had that whole history of like, becoming known as like the hammy horror actor. He actually sort of like really knew that, like, a lot of critics don't think of me as being a serious actor, but he did actually he ended up finding his niche when he played Oscar Wilde. in his one-man show, Diversions and Delights in 1977, where he actually got rave reviews. And he actually said, like in an interview at about 1990, sort of saying, this was my triumph as an actor. This is the pinnacle of what I wanted to do. And so, you know, it wasn't until the end of his life that he was able to like show people that he was a serious actor, a good, serious, dramatic actor. And he could perform, you know, because otherwise, you know, some of the work that he was getting through AIP and everything, he just had to like take the money and run, sort of thing. But Oscar Wilde, Diversions and Delights was his triumph.
Is that seeable anywhere, Peter?
No, there is on YouTube. I did find somebody had put an audio recording. It's such a shame that it wasn't videoed when he was doing it, because he did it between 1977 and 1980, 81. And I was very lucky to actually see him perform it on stage. It was for my 17th birthday in Perth, Western Australia. So, and I got to meet him afterwards. So that was, you know, a big tick. And, you know,
that's amazing
to meet your hero and to see him in the production that he felt was the best thing he would ever do as an actor.
Wow.
That is so special. Well, I never had the chance to meet Ava. I wish I did. But you know, Ava had a similar kind of experience. You know, she had insecurities with her acting abilities. A lot of that kind of, I think personally, stemmed from kind of the early treatment in Hollywood. She went to Hollywood with a very thick North Carolina accent, and they kind of, you know, somewhat tried to break her of that and remove it. And we're constantly doing the same kind of things they did to other stars like Judy, which Carrie and I've talked about before, where they tried to, you know, change her look, change her appearance, make her act a certain way and do a certain, you know, be a certain way. And in her first, you know, series of films at MGM, either uncredited roles or small bit parts, she's dressed very much like an MGM star, that type of makeup, that type of hairdo, that type of costuming and all at that period of time. But then when they loaned her out for Whistle Stop and the Killers, a lot of her, I mean, she's still glamorous, but her makeup is much more simplistic. It's much more, you know, her hair is loose and wavy, and her dresses are beautiful and tailored. But, you know, in The Bribe, the bulk of her costumes are more kind of casual attire, you know, loose blouses and skirts and that kind of thing. But she's able to be a little more natural looking, a little more herself, probably a little closer to her own sense of style. And those films where she was able to start being more of herself and more natural, you know, they always use the word kind of earthy with her, but it's an appropriate word because that is very much how she performed, very naturalistic. And I think that's why a lot of her performances still ring true today. They've held up. They're not so, you know, she wasn't such a specific character. You know, she wasn't, you know, the Ava Gardner type. She did movies, you know, she worked in every genre. She worked in every type of film, you know, horror, musical, romance, you know, fantasy, you name it. She was in it, and had the chance to kind of flex that, you know, her abilities in those different roles and different films. But it wasn't until kind of, you know, the mid 50s, kind of her peak of box office draw, you know, in films like The Barefoot Contessa, Mogambo, those films, Pandora and the Flying Dutchman and all that, that she really showed that she could carry a movie and showed that she, you know, was a really talented actress in her own right, you know, culminating with something like Night of the Iguana, where she just put it all out there and was totally natural and earthy and all of that, the things that really define kind of what her screen presence was when you look at it in its totality.
Excellent, excellent. Let's check on the potatoes here. What I did, and I've taken your advice, Laura, I've cut them up into fours. They're not looking like wedges. They're kind of looking a little like blobs. I don't know. I'm trying. But this is kind of what it's looking like so far. But I'm gonna keep letting it sit here on low heat and see how it does. But so Peter, tell us about you said you had some news possibly?
Yes, I do have some news. So
I love news. Okay.
we did the hardback limited edition as a limited edition, 250 copies. And I'm absolutely bowled over by the fact that, like, you know, we only literally published it in like Halloween, and we are now March, and literally it's sold out, which is great. But I've had requests all the way around the world, you know, thanks to, you know, like programs like this, which gets the word out. People are saying, but I'd love a copy, I'd love a copy. And also, is that, you know, like, it's been quite expensive to actually send the copies to America because of like the shipping rates are just astronomical.
Oh, yeah.
So I came up with an idea, and we are going to do a print on demand version through Amazon in April. But it'll be a very slightly different edition. It won't be in color, and it won't have those lovely galleries that actually make the hardback so unique. So I got a proof the other day. So this is what it looks like. It's all done, but it's basically the, we'll do the Ava Gardner one. There we go. So basically it's exactly the same, but you just have the recipes on 2 pages. You've got the biography and the film review, but you don't have the gallery. And then, so it's like 52 pages less. But I tell you what, it's so much easier to use in the kitchen because I don't mind getting this stained. So this will be available on Amazon or throughout the world in April. You know, so hopefully it will do well, sort of thing.
And I will continue to bang the drum very loudly when this release happens too, because I know a lot of people who really wanted to order it, but the shipping costs were so prohibitive. So this is a fantastic way to get the book in more people's hands. Excellent. And Peter, you'll keep us posted about when you come to the States, because maybe you can.
Yes, well, if I do, I hope so. Yes, exactly. Oh, and also I was going to say is that if anybody's interested in any information about the book, just post a comment saying send me information in Carrie's Facebook page on the comments, and I'll follow it through and send you an email. So if you want to follow through and get a copy in April or May onwards.
Excellent. Will there be any digital copies? Because I'm kind of a Luddite myself. I love a big thick book, but I know a lot of people download for Kindle or the iPad or whatever, and that's how they prefer to consume books. So is there going to be any version for that?
Well, I'm currently looking at that. Is it because of the way the book is structured, you know, because you've got these wonderful, you know, the way it's been set out is the way that we've got Jenny's says, you know, about her version, what she says about the recipe, the history of the recipe. Then you've got the recipes, and then you have the verdicts, which is all our test cooks. You know, we had over, 70 people around the world who tested all the recipes. Because they're all in blocks, to do it in Kindle, it just doesn't work. So I have to actually basically redesign it and do a completely new version. So we might do that later in the year because it does take a lot of time, and I've never done it before, and so I'm learning.
Understandable. So Laura, would you like to do the presentation at this point on the Bribe? I've still got potatoes cooking here. I made you the co-host, so hopefully that will enable you to do screen sharing.
We'll give it a go. For everybody watching, I've worked with the museum's director and collections manager to pull some artifacts related to the Bribe that I thought would be fun to share and we can talk about. It's primarily photographs and some clippings and other things, but I thought it would just be neat to kind of see how the movie was marketed and how Ava was represented in the press at that particular time. So we'll give this a go. Here goes, Carrie. Share screen. Let's see, how did we do this last time? Let me see here. Sorry for any technical difficulties.
Oh, okay.
Talk amongst yourselves while I try.
Yes. Hey, you know what? While you're figuring this out, let me check in with Facebook, see if we've got any questions popping up here. Hang on just a second for me. Let's see, 40 comments so far. That's cool. Let's see. Danny Miller, have to head out right now, but trying to think of more connections between Ava and Vincent. Okay, let's see. Hello to Benjamin in Germany. It seems one of the main things that MGM did was to glamorize their stars. He also says Jane Russell was an underestimated film noir queen. I definitely agree with that. Barbara Boyd Doss says, I saw Theater of Blood as a kid and it gave me nightmares. I think Vincent would like that he gave anybody nightmares. That'd be awesome. Leslie Apple, I saw Vincent on Dick Cavett's show where he performed Oscar Wilde. Very cool. Krista Lawler, reading about Dorothy Dandridge right now. Ava considered Marilyn one of her closest pals. Leslie, I'm interested in the Amazon version of the cookbook. All right, we're ready to go now. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. It gave us a minute to take questions. That's a good thing.
Gotcha. I've gotten a new computer since we did our last episode. I had not set up this, the Zoom to be able to do this. So, here's just a lovely photo of Ava in her black dress that we talked about. It's a crop top dress designed by Irene. And it's very iconic. You can see this kind of look continues to inspire runways today, as does lots of Ava's looks over the years. This is a picture of the marquee at the Capitol Theater on Broadway in New York. And I thought I would share a little bit. We talked about the film not having the best reviews when it first came out, and Bosley Crowther, who was notoriously not a fan of Ava's, wrote a lot of not the nicest reviews. He did like Night of the Iguana years later, I believe, but he wrote, if you plan to put down your money to see the Capitol's The Bribe, we suggest that you be prepared to write off this extravagance as a folly and nothing more. And if it didn't have several big names in it, it would be Low Man on a Grindhouse triple bill. So I thought that was kind of an amusing statement to make for this film that we've all kind of grown to love. But then these pictures, I have two slides of some photographs of some stills that were taken, promotional stills for the film. These are pictures of Ava with Robert Taylor, and these pictures, as well as the next slide, these pictures totally crack me up because of the way they have positioned, like you see their chins. I mean, people just don't snuggle like this. I've never snuggled with anybody like this. I've tried it just out of curiosity, but it's just so amusing that his nose is so close to her eyes, and again, the chin's touching. And then here's more where their noses are touching, and they just crack me up, these photographs. But these were the photographs that were used on lots of the poster art around the world. So here are three different posters from the museum's collection. The one on the far side is the large standard one sheet, which it's included in the book as well. But this is the most common US poster, and we have lots of these. We have about 6 or 8 of these posters in the collection at the museum. Then the middle is a 14 by 36 insert, and then the last is a sample lobby card. But you can see these pictures that I showed of their noses really close or their chins touching and all were in these posters. And then they had the heads of the other stars looking menacing. I love, in particular, on the lobby card, the 3 heads of Lawton, Price, and Hodiak looking quite sinister in that. So here is just the cover of a French advertising guide for the film that we have. And again, that's got the picture, they made an illustration of that picture of their noses really close to each other. And in France, the film was called Conspiracy Island as opposed to The Bribe. Here is a program book that was given out when the film was released, a Danish program book. And I believe that translates to bribery. So that's what the film would have been called there. And then here's some inside pictures of the spreads in the book. And I love the graphics in this with the greedy hand with green money, handing to each other. I think that's really neat and fun. very common. I don't know, some of us who are collectors of old Hollywood ephemera have probably stumbled across Movie Story magazine. I love these magazines. These were, they came out monthly, and there were a couple different ones. Motion Picture Magazine was one, and this Movie Story, where they would do kind of a full-length article version of the film's story with great photographs, generally with like one spot color. In this case, again, the green on the inside sleeve or spread. But this was, I think it's about an 8-page spread within the magazine telling the whole story. And this coincided, the film was released in the States in February. This issue came out in February. So this would have coincided with the release of the film in the States. And again, we've got the picture of on the cover of their noses, touching, which is fun. Here's just a great photograph of Ava that was part of a marketing piece that came out, kind of a little collector's card that MGM put out. And she's wearing this fantastic jewelry. The jewelry in the film was done by Joseph's of Hollywood, all of her jewelry. So I assume these pieces were from Joseph's as well. In the museum collection, we have multiple binders that look like this. Ava had a personal friend named Andrew Anthos who worked with her kind of on and off doing odd jobs. And he was a collector and, had a really fascinating story in his own right. But he ended up working with Ava to take all of her clippings, press photographs and other things, and compile them for her in scrapbooks. And so we have, in some cases, more than one scrapbook for a given film. But in the collection, we have almost a binder for every one of her pictures. And they're just great resources, full of clippings and other things. So most of what I'm going to show you after this slide is from the 2 binders that we have for the Bribe. So this is a little advertisement that was sent out when the Bribe was released, and it shows Ava in all of these great kind of candid, or sort of, they probably were staged, but candid shots. The first one is her putting on a little bit of like makeup or, cleaning her face or something. She's eating a sandwich. She's playing with a dog. She's got a bow and arrow in the bottom picture, and then she's with a horse in the other one. And if you were to read the little bio, some of it's accurate, some of it's not exactly accurate, but it again kind of starts positioning Ava when this film was released, talking about her in the context of being a bit of a newcomer and, just now making it as a star, even though she's been in Hollywood for 8 years. But that's kind of neat. And then these are some other fun photographs of behind the scenes shots with Robert Taylor. There's a swimming scene in the movie, and some lucky folk, if you look at the third picture, some lucky person got to squeeze a sponge over Ava and get her all wet for the scene. And Robert Taylor is finding that hilarious. And then in the second picture, Robert Taylor is pouring a water can over her to get her properly wet for the scene. So those are just her expression in those photographs. I just think it's really adorable. Here's a great picture of Ava in her signature black dress from the film. This is from October of '48. So as they were, getting the film made. And they, again, kind of one of the other themes to how they positioned her and talked about her in advertisements or press releases was that she was, sexy, whistle-worthy Ava Gardner is being trained to act as well as look sexy. So that's kind of the caption to this photo. But again, that's kind of what's reiterated in the text, talking about her beauty and her screen appeal and all of that. Here's another one. The most sexy star to hit MGM lot since those early Joan Crawford days is Ava Gardner. So again, that's another one kind of having that same kind of sentiment. Here is a Spanish newspaper clipping of Ava with Necio Her Brown, who, for those who don't know, but probably do in our audience today, he was a frequent collaborator, writing partner with Arthur Freed. So all of the wonderful songs we love in Singing in the Rain, he co-wrote those. He actually wrote the song that Ava's character performs in the nightclub scene, the song Situation Wanted, which it's a great song. I can't believe it's not a standard kind of jazz standard or something. Somebody needs to remake that song and make it a popular standard, but it's a great song. And this was a press clipping that in the translation basically says that he was brought in to write a song just for Ava for this movie. And then here's another picture of them with a recording of the song so she could listen to it in practice before they shot the scene. Here's a picture, a still photograph from the set of Ava in that nightclub scene. Her singing was dubbed by Eileen Wilson, who was a big band singer and who actually dubbed Ava in One Touch of Venus as well as the Hucksters. And Ava liked Eileen quite a bit and really liked how she performed and matched up with Ava's own voice. But she performed Situation Wanted in the film. Here's another press clipping of Ava at the same time, talking about her, how she worked to become a star and how hard she worked and how she's, one of 10,000 girls who actually made it. And it tells a little bit about her background. But again, she's been in Hollywood 8 years at this point, but they're still talking about her as a newbie. And they're really talking a lot about like MGM's investing in her, and she's finally got her own dressing room and all kinds of stuff like that, which is amusing. Here's a picture of Ava with Charles Lawton. And she really thought a lot of him. He was incredibly kind to her on the film set. And she is quoted in her book, Ava, My Story, remembering him quite fondly. And she said, in the breaks during the filming of The Bribe, Charles Lawton, one of my co-stars, used to take me aside and read me passages out of the Bible, then make me read them back with the right cadences and stresses. He was a brilliant classical actor, absorbed by his craft and loving it. And he was the only one in all of my film years who took that time and went out of his way to try and make an actress out of me. So she really, really loved him and appreciated his attention on the set and trying to encourage her talent. So here are these fantastic photos, which Cherie shared one of them in the promotional graphics for this episode today. But these are pictures of Vincent and Ava chatting at the in Ava's dressing room, which again, all those press clippings made mention of Ava finally getting her own dressing room at MGM with the work on this film. But these are just the cutest photographs, and you can tell this looks so genuine to me. I don't think that any of this, I mean, while obviously there's a photographer there taking the pictures, they just look like they're having the best time, whether a photographer's there or not. And I think they're great. And this next one, this is another one from the series, but the caption on it, I love, it says, if you look at the top, it says, good price. It says Vincent Price drops his movie personality of villainy as he visits Ava Gardner in her portable dressing room on the set of The Bribe. So I think that's funny. These are the good price photos is what we should call them. And then here's another photograph in the series. As you can see, they're both reading movie magazines. Ava's magazine has Judy Garland on the cover, and I think Vincent's has Lana Turner, but I'm not totally sure. But in the museum's collection is this handwritten letter that Vincent sent Ava. And I'll read you what it says because it might be a little hard to read on the screen, but it says it was sent to her. I don't know the exact date, but it was either after Magambo came out or it had wrapped. But he says, Dear Ava, my dreams come true. Thanks for the beauty of you. And though I may never be Clark Gable, I'll never forget Magambo. That snake. I haven't made up my mind where to hand you. I think, I may have left out a part. Let's see. I haven't made up my mind where to hang you. Excuse me. I think near the abstract art. And I think, he says, I think near the abstract art, beauty is best defined in abstract ways. Hope we all meet up soon and hope you are well. And then of course he signs it with love and thanks, Ava. So I just think that's really cool that we have that in the collection. And then just for reference earlier, this is the cookbook that the recipe that we made today came from. This is her soul food cookbook. And as you can see, there's the Bloomingdale's price tag over in the corner. So that's it for today of the artifacts that I brought, but I hope you all liked seeing some of those. And I will exit here. Let me see if I can get it back to our main screen here.
Thank you so much, Lora, for sharing these treasures of the museum with us. It's really a treat to get to see a letter Vincent wrote to Ava. I was not expecting that. That is really cool.
I wasn't expecting that either, but I can date that for you.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, because it says at the bottom, Coral sends love. So that was obviously after he had married Coral Brown in 1974. So it's probably in the 80s.
Really?
Because he also mentions Reg, and Reg was their handy, the person who dealt with all of their businesses and things. So.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I couldn't quite make out the handwriting on that last sentence, but now you've totally made it make sense for me. So
it says Reg is in treatment, Coral sends love. So that's, yeah.
Great. Well, that's wonderful. And obviously she must have sent him a photograph of her from Magombo. So that's wonderful. Thanks for that additional information. I'll let the museum know that so we can add that to the provenance of the letter.
You know what I often wonder about these stars is how they would feel about how much love there is for them today. Like if Vincent and Ava could be here today, would they just be stunned that we're still talking about them and celebrating them and cooking their food? How would they feel about it? Peter?
Oh, I think they would. I think Vincent would love it. I mean, when I broached the whole idea of the cookbook to Victoria, she said, this is the kind of cookbook that my father would absolutely love, because not only was it about, exploring the recipes from her parents' collection, but it's also about bringing people together and about sort of like sharing a great love of food, but also film history, but also just having fun together. So I think, something like this is great, but I think they would just love it, that we're actually appreciating them in different ways, not only for their acting or for their legacy, but also, just their love of life.
I agree. Lora, how do you feel about how would Ava feel if she looked around at my flounder right now?
You and I've had talked a little bit about that in the past, and I so wish that all of the stars who we love from classic Hollywood had a chance to live to see Turner Classic Movies come into being, because I know, especially for those of us in the States, that has just been such a place of discovery. I know that was a gateway for me with a lot of films, and I think they would be so happy that their films are still finding audiences and that people are discovering their work and the complexities of their work, and that they do have this legacy that continues. Ava Gardner's lifetime, she set up a trust that would serve as a kind of lasting legacy to her life and career. And today it supports the Ava Gardner Museum as well as St. Jude's and Queen Victoria Hospital. And knowing that she's still relevant and still, people want to read about her and know about her and support, merchandise and things that are connected with her products and stuff that can support that trust and can support those organizations. I think she'd just be blown away by that. She did live she knew there was a museum. The kind of, the beginnings of the museum were in place before she passed away. She went to the door once. She was home visiting, and she and her sisters, it was a summer attraction at the time. And she and her sisters went to the museum to see it, and they were closed that day. And her sister said, well, let's call and we can get you in. And she said,
oh, that wait around there.
Yeah. She said, I don't need to see it. I lived it. But I think she'd be really blown away by what the museum has become and the attraction that it is, and how so many people just still love her and find her relevant and find connections to her and are discovering her anew. Same with Vincent Price. I think just people continue to find him and be so interested in him and excited by him and impressed with the body of work that he left behind and the impact that he's made. It's just wonderful. And it's so great that there are people out there like us through shows like this that get to celebrate those stars and show a different side of them that maybe everybody, the general fan may not know, the depths of these people.
That's what I always say on my cemetery tour. I say one of the things I endeavor to do is peel back the layers, and that they might have been stars, sex symbols, icons, whatever, but they were people. And there was a lot more going on underneath the surface. And I always encourage people to take a closer look and take a deeper look at these people, not only professionally, but personally, because there's so much there to explore. And I want to show you guys. So it did say, Ava said to serve with a tomato sauce, but as they note in the book, Ava's recipe doesn't specify what kind of tomato sauce or what it is used for. So we suggest making a simple marinara and serving it on the side of the fillet. So I present to you all the final product.
Whoa!
Lemon wedge, marinara sauce, my fish, and the potatoes.
Woohoo! You did it.
Can I show ours as well?
Please do, Peter. I would love to see it.
So that's, that's mine.
That looks excellent.
Here's mine, everybody.
Nice. I like the green onion garnish. That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was good. I would say if you don't want to make a marinara, I made like a roasted red pepper, a roasted tomato. I roasted some tomatoes, cooked, sauteed some onions, and pureed all that together to make kind of a simple sauce. Commonly in North Carolina and probably other parts of the country too, the most common side condiments with flounder would be either cocktail sauce or a tartar sauce. So either one of those would go great with this, as well as with the potato as the side dish. So if you don't have time to make a sauce or don't want to make a sauce or don't want to open a jar of marinara just for a side sauce, anything like that would be a great addition to this recipe.
And same with also is that I kept thinking, well, we need something like a salad to go with it, because there's a lot of fish and there's a lot of carbs. And so there's quite a few salads recipes in the cookbook which you can use. And I actually used the wilted spinach recipe, which is lovely.
That's a great idea.
I think that's why I wanted to put the green onion on the potato, because the plate, the red of the tomato sauce was nice, but I needed another little color on the plate, a little green.
Green's always good.
Yes.
I cannot wait until I can get a ton of people together and have Vincent Price potlucks or Vincent Price dinner parties. That would be so cool.
That would be so cool.
Well,
Also, I was going to say something about the potatoes, which I forgot to mention earlier, is that when I did my potatoes, obviously I scooped it out, but I cut it in half. So actually I had I got a whole potato skin. So I cooked them in the oven, which we put in the book. And you can actually then freeze them or use them later to actually stuff them. So you don't have to waste all the potato.
That's a great point. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. This has been so delightful. I'm hoping, Peter, that we can do a lot more of these joint episodes with Benson and his co-stars, because it's so much fun. And thank you both for everything that you do to keep these people's lives, legacies, and artistry alive and well. I, for one, am so grateful, and I think everybody watching is probably grateful as well. So
thank you.
Thank you. And to everybody watching, thank you again so much for all of your support. I'm very grateful. And please stay tuned for more food, fun, and film history from Hollywood Kitchen.
Thank you, Carrie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Peter. Bye.
Good night in London. Good afternoon in North Carolina. Bye.
Bye.